Hi folks, welcome to another edition of Government Matters here on Focus Springfield. My name is Mike Dobbs, I'm your host, and I'm also managing editor at Reminder Publishing. And today we've got the pleasure of speaking with State Rep Angelo Puppolo. Thank you, Angelo, for coming in.
Thank you, Mike. Glad to be here. It's an honor and privilege.
So Governor Baker has just released his version of the budget. I know that maybe you and your colleagues have not had enough time to thoroughly scrutinize it, but I was wondering if you have any impressions of it to begin with.
No, I mean, I'm very pleased with what I've seen so far. Like I said, it was just released yesterday. I like what he's done, relative to some of the education stuff, a little longer term commitment. He's looked at, I think, some of the areas that we're going to look at in the legislature, in terms of funding for, like I said, education. That's going to be a big issue this year, getting that foundation budget raised to where we need to raise. We were close last session in doing it. The Senate passed their version. We passed a different version. We couldn't come together on that, but I know that that's going to be a priority in the House to get that done this year. So that education funding is key. Some of the other areas, continue on with public safety and certainly the opioid epidemic. There's a lot in there where we're going to go back at. We've done a lot in the Commonwealth relative to that. The governor and lieutenant governor have been a good partner in that area. So we're going to enhance some of the programs, and certainly even working with our sheriff Nick Cochi, who's been a tremendous leader in that area as well. So all in all, we're still looking at it, but local aid, education money, critically important. Some of the senior funding and the veterans funding that we're looking at. But all in all, it's a place that we start. Right, every year it comes out pretty much the same time. We're going around doing our, due diligence on the House side. Our budget will come out in April. We'll debate that towards the end of April. But so far, there's some areas where we're going to, augment. I think in some areas where we're going to have to, look at trimming down. I know he's committed to raising the, money we have in the rainy day fund, which is always a good thing. We've got about $2 billion in there now, and I think going up to about $2.8 billion would be good, even getting up to $3 billion if it's possible. But there's always that that tug of war. Do you put more money in the rainy day fund, or do you fund programs today? Because people are always clamoring on, where can we get as much money as we possibly can. So it's always a balancing act, but it's a good start, and I'm optimistic that we're going to have a good final product, as we always do. And I can assure you that in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we will have a state of the Commonwealth. So we'll get a really good snapshot of what's going on in our state at that particular time. So, again, it's the beginning of the process. Things are right on schedule.
I know that there's been a little bit of pushback already. I've read media reports that some people are upset that the governor has, quote unquote, raised taxes on certain things. Like, for instance, asking Etsy and other online retailers to collect sales tax for Massachusetts. I think that there was a tax that was associated with vaping or something like that. And some people have been very critical about this. Do you see this as something that's necessary? Do you see this as something that is logical? Like, with so many people buying stuff online, should they be paying sales tax just as if they bought it at a brick and mortar retailer here in the Commonwealth?
Well, eventually that's coming to fruition, I believe, in the Commonwealth. Certainly, there's been court decisions and some rulings that have been looking at that. And I think as we move forward to, equal the playing field, I do think that that's going to happen. So, it is, it's a quote unquote, new tax, if you will, in terms of people that online internet stuff. But if you're buying something from a company that has a presence already in Massachusetts, you're paying that sales tax anyhow, whether you buy it in store or online. So, I think it's a matter of fairness. Some people do try to avert that, but there is under, the Mass, DOR regulations, if you really buy something out of state, you're supposed to fill out a form and pay that tax anyhow. Do people do that? I don't think so, not on a regular basis, but I think that's a loophole that we're looking to close. But some of the other areas, Mike, we've got a lot of revenue, new revenue, right around the corner here from, MGM with the casino gaming. That's a new industry, right? So we're coming online relative to full, casino gaming in the Commonwealth. The casino outside of Boston's opening, so that's going to bring in some new revenues that we've never had before. You're looking at the marijuana sales. That's a tremendous influx of money as we roll out new stores, as the Commonwealth, the Cannabis Control Commission rolls out new stores, and the Commonwealth adds to that, more sales, more revenue into the Commonwealth. Again, new money that we didn't have. I know Chairman Wagner and others in the House are working on, sports betting legislation, which is going to bring additional revenues in. So I think the economy's been robust. I mean, I think while there are some issues and some people are concerned about these other taxes that are already in, place that are sort of going to be accelerated, I think we have a hard look at what we're going to do in the House relative to this new revenue and the stream that's coming in to be able to continue balancing the budget. So, I mean, while I know there's always been a tough situation relative to that sales tax, its time has come. I mean, the internet's everywhere. People are buying things, stores are everywhere. So I think even the playing field, even more so, but just as a matter of fairness, to be able to say, look, if you buy something from a company that is here, like, again, if you bought something before on Yahoo, maybe you didn't have to pay sales tax. Now you do. So if you buy something at Staples, you've always had to pay sales tax, whether it was online or in store, because their presence is here. So it's just a matter of, I think, the time coming for that.
You mentioned sports betting, and of course with the Supreme Court decision that basically allowed it to go to any state that wanted it, several states have gone really, really quickly into it. Are you concerned at all that we may be missing out on some revenues if there's sports betting in some adjacent New England states or northeastern states?
No, I mean, I think, we're doing it, we're going to take our time, do it right. We're going to get it done this session. But, the sort of have a knee-jerk reaction to when the Supreme Court made their decision late last year, certainly after our late session last year, but, in the middle towards the end of the year when they made their decision, some states were already in line. New Jersey was, chomping at the bit. Rhode Island, our neighbor, was, already, almost ready to roll it out. So there's other states that were a little bit on the drawing board further out. But I think, it's always better to take a prudent, a step backwards, learn a little bit. I don't think we're going to lose that much. We got to figure out what we're going to do, what the balance is between, the lottery, what their role is going to be, what the role of the casinos are going to be. And how that's going to be implemented, how that's going to be controlled. I mean, if you look at the marijuana policy, again, that was a referendum, as in most states that passes, then the state has to deal with it. But the bill that we passed ultimately, drew upon, some of the problems and some of the issues that other states have already had because, we use it as a learning tool. So I think we can do the same thing. We're certainly not going to be that far behind, or, that far down a road relative to policy for online sports gaming and sports betting, but we're going to, to do it right, and it's going to come out relatively soon, and we're going to have a good product here as we have with the other, either casino gaming or cannabis.
Well, let's talk about cannabis for a moment. Of course, this is being left up to individual cities where the populace actually passed the referendum. Springfield was among them. East Longmeadow was not. Wilbraham was not. Nope. Which means all the folks from Wilbraham and East Longmeadow who want pot are going to come to Springfield. Do you see this as a major source of revenue for cities, towns, and the state, or do you think that ultimately it's not really going to be much of a player?
I mean, if you look at the number of the just the gross sales they've had so far, I think that certainly is indication of that the robust sales are going to continue. So I think we're going to benefit from that as an aggregate in the Commonwealth. And I think certainly the host cities that continue on, like you said, and the communities that have passed it and haven't banned it, like the Wilbrahams and East Longmeadows, which is fine. I mean, that fits for their community. I mean, I support my district is Springfield, it's Wilbraham and part of East Longmeadow. So I've got to work and I do well with all the local delegation and what the communities want. So Wilbraham and East Longmeadow have been pretty clear with it. They were clear at the ballot box, certainly clear with the Board of Selectmen and Town Council, in East Longmeadow, and that's fine. And that works for that community. We didn't want to, the Cannabis Control Commission didn't want to, force that down, any community's throat. We did add an incentive to a city or a community that, that wanted to have it or voted for it or ultimately agreed to have it for an additional little revenue that's going to go right to their community. So that extra approximately 2%, I think will be, utilized within that community in a beneficial way. Now, they may find out, as they've seen, I think some of the other areas have, with the limited release, if you will, of the openings of some of these stores, it's been chaotic. But at least some of the areas I know have gone to sort of appointment onlys where they try to control some of the crowd, try to control some of the issues that happen. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a good revenue stream for the Commonwealth, as it has been for other states. You go out to Denver and you look at what happened out there and what that has meant to the economy. So if you look at other states, what they've been able to do in aggregate, and I think that little incentive locally could mean the difference for some of the communities. Again, if the community wants it, they're going to be able to have it. If they don't, that's fine. I mean, I think that's a good balance to what we're going to do right here in the Commonwealth. So,
I mean, your district, you have chunks of 3 different communities, and they are different communities in size. I mean, Wilbraham is not an industrial community like Springfield may be considered. On the other hand, East Long Meadow's got a lot of industry with its industrial parks. Everyone's got issues about their schools. Do you find that serving a district like that, are there more common points of interest that you're hearing from local officials and residents than non-common points?
Well, you know, sort of my 1/160th, if you will, 160 reps, so my 1/160th, the 12th Hamden District, is kind of like, even though it's Springfield, Wilbraham, and East Long Meadow, it's kind of like the suburbs of Springfield, if you will. So my community, while it's, 3 different communities, a lot of the same problems. I don't have the inner city, I don't represent directly the inner city part of Springfield. My area, in for a penny, in for a pound, yes. I mean, I'm going to do all I can to help the entire city. My first priority is my district. But then, the entire city, obviously, same thing with East Long Meadow. I've got about a quarter of the town of East Long Meadow, but in for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, I do all I can for the town. I go to as many events as I can there, participate as much as I can, and work with Brian Ash and, certainly Senator Lesser on trying to do what we can for our communities. And, I do think there's some unique problems, when you go out to, in particular, like a gateway city like Springfield. If you peel back sort of the onion and get out of the suburb area, you look at some of the issues. But, I think, the fact that, I was on the city council here for almost 10 years. I worked very well with Mayor Sarno, worked well with the city council locally, school committee. I get it. I'm born and raised here, so I mean, I do know some of the issues, and certainly we work together. And the biggest thing is that our delegation, whether you look at Springfield proper and you say, okay, well, the 4 representatives that actually live in Springfield and represent Springfield, or if you expand it out to the number of reps that have a portion of Springfield or even Western Mass, I mean, our delegation works together very well. And I think that really speaks volumes for what we can do together and get it done in Boston. You don't really see that a lot of places. There's some frictions among different, legislators, but here, while we don't agree with everything, my priorities certainly for my district are a little different than other areas, but, we work together. So we look at the big picture, but we're always focused on, the sort of the minute in the weeds kind of thing of what is going to be important to my district. And, we've got, there's a lot of cross problems, a lot of cross concerns, but, whether we're battling, education issues, local, funding for, our community, or, even, just trying to get, either local earmarks. I mean, I think, again, it transcends across that to make sure that we're doing the best we can for our particular areas.
A lot of times we in Western Massachusetts feel that we're not getting our fair share, and that's been a recurring theme for decades. Do you really think that's true? Do you think that there's inequities based on the regions of the state? I know that money has to go where people are, and the bulk of the people are in the eastern part of the state, so that makes sense. But especially like in discussions about the education funding, there are questions, and also local aid, there have always been questions about whether or not there's a certain amount of equity among the various parts of the state.
Well, I mean, we worked hard to try to close that gap. So, is it real? Yeah, I mean, in some areas, certainly. I mean, like you mentioned, Mike, I mean, the sheer number of it, right? So if you just look at it in a geographic standpoint, right, there's some reps in Boston that can literally walk their district, right? So they got about 40,000 people within a walking radius. I certainly can't walk my district, but if you look at some of the districts out in the Berkshires, I mean, there's, dozens of communities that some of the House members have. So it becomes, a numbers game at the end of the day, right? So if we go in, like I just said, as a delegation, when we go into the Speaker's office or we talk, amongst ourselves as a group, we try to stick together because we know that we need to because of the votes and the numbers that we have. There's more reps out of Boston in that particular area than we have in all of Western Mass. So numbers clamoring, it gets you, what you need to get. Education certainly has been an issue, for a number of years. We've been trying to sort of close that gap. We're trying to work on, the funding formula has been something that we've talked about, but it's been hard to do because you start to realign things. You really got to add to the pot before you can, I think, realistically talk about, having a full reform. I mean, otherwise you're going to rob Peter to pay Paul, and this community is going to be opposed to it. This community is going to be against that. So you have to work together. But I think we've been able to do that, and I think if we can raise the foundation budget, we can focus on education, for one example. We can, I think, shorten up those inequities. And again, we've got, we lost, last session, we've lost a number of seasoned reps, from our area. Right. A number of people that had long-term, tenure in terms in the House of Representatives, great institutional knowledge, great areas to be able to, pick up the phone and get things done. So we have lost a lot of these, long-term people with great knowledge and great, advocacy. But people have stepped up. We're going to pick up the ball, and we're going to continue moving as a solid delegation. And it's like anything else. I mean, the squeaky wheel does get the grease. And as we move forward in Boston, we work as a delegation. We're going to continue. I mean, we fought for a lot of I think good things. We won a lot of great battles out here in our area in Western Mass, and we're going to continue to do that. I mean, we got one of the casinos out here. We've got a number of things that have happened out here. We've got good leadership, Mayor Sarno. We've got a good delegation that works together, and I think that we're able to overcome some of those obstacles. And I will tell you, the Speaker of the House has been a great friend. Certainly myself and all of Springfield and Western Mass. He's been out here a number of times, more so than any other speaker. And I don't mean that just because he's been the longest serving speaker. He's been out here on a regular basis for many, many years. Comes out here, he's here. He really cares about our area, and he's actually called Springfield almost like the Winthrop of Boston, of his area. So, and same thing goes with Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito. I mean, they've been out here a number of times. They're no strangers to the area. They get it. They know we're part of the, of the Commonwealth, and they're doing as much as they can, working with us in the legislative delegation to make things happen.
So, we're seeing incredible gridlock on the federal level. Yeah. But we're not seeing it on the Massachusetts level. We're not seeing it here in the Commonwealth. Is that because you think people actually want to reach bipartisan solutions to problems, that there's that spirit that's still alive here?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, we don't have the acrimony nowhere near as they have out in D.C. So we do work together. I mean, Brad Jones, a minority leader, I consider him a good friend. We work together on legislation. Senator Humison, there's other representatives that are, we work together, Todd Smola, we work together on a lot of stuff. So, I mean, in D.C., in other states too, it seems like if a party files a particular bill, the opposing party, no matter what the bill is, are opposed to it immediately. It's really no way to run a government. We have here, I mean, yes, there's lines that are drawn, no doubt about it in Massachusetts, but for the most part, when a bill comes out, I file a bill, I've got a number of co-sponsors that are Republicans, and vice versa. A number of Republicans that file bills, I co-sponsor. So just because it's sort of pigeonholed, either red or blue, if you will, as a file, I look at it as an aggregate, and that's why we get things done here. And again, even with the governor, I get along with Charlie and certainly Karen, serving within the House of Representatives with her. You pick up the phone, and I mean, and they're there too. So I mean, I think that's important to point that out, that we work together because maybe it's smaller area, maybe it's what we have to do, maybe it's what we've always done, but it's the way to get things done. And again, at least we get a lot of bills that are working together, and really that's the only way we can get things done, for sometimes, and we work together on a lot of areas. So I wish we'd see more of that in Washington.
It would be nice. Maybe we could end the shutdown. Speaking of the shutdown, have you seen any effects here locally in your district or statewide? I mean, I know we've got federal employees who are not getting paid, and this is becoming a huge issue. I just was wondering if any of your constituents fell into that category, and if they've reached out to you at all.
I've had some calls, some concerns from some people that work for the TSA. They're not, they're worried about obviously moving forward, how long this is going to last. They're not, they're just stopped to get their pays. They're worried about that. Their families. Some people, on a personal level, had trips planned, still went, I believe, to D.C., but couldn't get into the museums. Couldn't go to the National Zoo. Obviously, much less of a concern than somebody that's not getting paid. But if that was your time to go and you've planned it for a year to go to Washington to visit, some of these museums or some of the monuments, while they may be open, the monuments you can go through, but the museums you can't. So you can't go to the zoo. So, I mean, there's some frustration on that level. But I've heard a lot of concern that just what you said, people just aren't getting along. There's really no end in sight, and how far is this going to go? So I have been getting some calls. I imagine there are going to be more. I'm sure that people realize that, that the federal issue is something that, obviously Congressman Neal's office and, our other, senators may have to handle or deal with. But, I think that, by and large, people are frustrated. And you can see it. Again, some of the calls that I get of the concerns, I haven't gotten a ton of calls, but I think that's just going to mount as people start, the people that get their pays, that the paychecks rely on the federal government, they're not getting their pay, very concerned. And I'm concerned about it. So I think all of us thought that it would never be this long. I think we thought it might shut down for a short period of time, but here we are, 30 some odd plus days, and it's going to continue to go.
I know that California is actually extending unemployment benefits to. Do you think something like that would ever happen in Massachusetts?
We could look at it if we have to. I know there's a number of, we're in the middle of bill filing is already over with for early seasonally filed bills in Massachusetts. We're in a process now of co-sponsoring all these bills, but you could file any bill. A couple pieces of legislation, a few people have filed relative to trying to deal with that, the shutdown. We could extend it. I know the governor's talked about, maybe some, some issues coming forward, but I think we got to wait to see how long this is going to go. If there's really no end in sight, we got to make some provisions for some of these people. I think otherwise, it's just going to be a disaster. Moving forward again. Especially some of the people that rely on the incomes. And if it's I don't have anybody specifically that talked to me that both husband and wife work for the federal government and are not getting paid. But I know that that's an issue in a number of areas. So. Definitely something to be concerned about.
Absolutely. You're talking about bills being filed. Have you seen any that interest you? Have you co-sponsored any of the new bills?
Yeah, we're in the process now of looking at a number of them. We've got, I filed, a number of bills on my own, dealing with a wide range of issues, from the insurance industry to some of the other areas. We're in the process now of co-sponsoring, a lot of bills for veterans, public safety firefighters, state police. We're looking at, some of the programs for autism, some of the other areas that I've co-sponsored in the past. So it's still fluid. We've got about another week or so for the co-sponsorships, and then, committee assignments will come out, and then all those bills will be, diverted to the particular committee of jurisdiction, and then we'll start having hearings on it. And then, that's when you really start to see. It's a chaotic time because, all the bills that didn't end up on the governor's desk signed die at the end of the session. So we'll have about 6,000 to 7,000 bills filed between, January and now the end of the session. So right now, I don't know the number, but it's probably tallied into the several thousand for the first couple of weeks. So it's hard to pour through all of that, the governor's budget, sign on to the bills. I had to get my bills done. And then we're looking for co-sponsors as well. So same idea, but it's as a veteran, it's always something that veteran to the House. It's always something that it's a busy, chaotic time of year. But we'll get it done, and once we get all these bills filed out to the committees, we'll start having hearings, and that's when you really get public input and the testimony from people that impact it. And it could be something that like I say, I may not have co-sponsored it because I didn't even know that it was a big issue. But you get compelling testimony at the hearing in Boston. I try to bring my committee meetings outside of Boston, being the chair currently of Technology and Intergovernmental Affairs. We've had some committees out here, so I try to bring, make it easier for people to testify, especially for local bills. But we're always welcome. In the day and age of internet, we get emails and obviously phone calls and letters. But public testimony is really what I think compels a lot of the bills to move forward, to see that, this is an issue that we need to address, and it could be something moving forward relative to the, to the shutdown.
Excellent. So I know you had a career. You've been a businessman, you're an attorney, long tenure on the city council. How did you get involved in public service? Because we always ask this question, if nothing else, to people understand the motivation of someone wanting to do this.
I was always interested. So, many years ago, my father passed away, but he was always involved. And he was actually on the city council in Springfield when it was a bicameral government, and he was a member there. He ran for state representative, but then, the career changed. He went back to the family plumbing business, and, they were in a real estate business, him and my uncles, and, they focused on more of the business side of things. But growing up, me personally, we were always involved in campaigns. I remember we used to, work for, even back then, Sheriff Ash out there working for, the local, elections, the local mayor's races, always doing something, always politically involved, whether it's holding a sign, going to events. Even as a young kid, I remember going with my father to a number of the, events, the rallies, and getting involved. And, people would come. I mean, they used to have the plumbing store right here on Main Street. So a lot of times I would work there in summers, vacations, and, people would come in even then and, ask for help. And, they were, not sort of politically active at that point, to the point that they were elected, but they were always involved. So they'd help people, and I'd see people come in, not only in need of, plumbing problems, but in need of other stuff. So they'd help them. So you get the bug. And, I ended up, I ran for city council. Didn't make it the first time, but got appointed to the Park Commission, served as the chairman of the Park Commission for 2 years. Which was a great learning experience. We've done a number of great things in the parks. Pat Sullivan was the superintendent then, still is now. Phenomenal job, phenomenal person. We did a lot at Forest Park. We expanded out the other parks. So I really got engaged in that, ran again for city council, won the election that particular year, and served there for almost 10 years. And pretty much every chairman at the time, every chair capacity that we had, served as the vice president of the city council, served the term as the president of the city council, and then never had a real plan, but the rep seat opened up, and ran for it and won, and been involved ever since. I love the job. I love helping people. We've got a district office in Wilbraham. Constituent service is a top priority of mine. I love being able to help people that come in with problems, and to get a resolution for that, and also the policy. I mean, you can't beat it. We do some great things in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, going back to one of my first votes, relative to marriage equality and moving forward. I mean, you really can't really beat, the difference that you can make in people's lives, whether, again, opioids, veterans, seniors, helping expand that, casino gaming, marijuana policy. Again, nobody agrees with everything. Nobody ever wins an election 100% of the time. But I think if you're committed, you do the right things, and you really have a passion for it, like I do, and really all of us that are involved, you really love it. It makes up for that drive and all the traffic and the headaches that are getting worse and worse and worse. Because with the Seaport District, I think the car and the traveling expansion has been increased incrementally. So before, when you can leave at a reasonable hour, now I say it, there's no good time to leave during a week for Boston, either going there or coming home because of the traffic. But again, it outweighs that. But, the love for the job, and I would encourage anybody that wants to get involved, start either student government, get involved with with the local government, maybe get on a commission, a youth commission, something like that, and work your way up and get involved in campaigns, work for people, get to know sort of the ropes and the issues, and you never know, take it from there. I mean, it still is. It's a great profession, and you can really do a lot, make a difference, and help a lot of people, and that's what really drives me. And in between all of that, I went to law school and was able to get my law degree, and I still got a master plumber's license, so I'm the only, I think, master plumber attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, frankly, probably in the country. But it's good stuff.
Absolutely.
Watergate at its best, right? I guess I could be the plumber, the lawyer, and the politician.
Angelo, thank you so much for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate having me.
And folks, thanks very much for watching another edition of Government Matters here on Focus Springfield.